Commander Zerathix of the Valonian Empire stood at the bridge of her flagship, the Crimson Dominion, watching the primitive blue planet rotate slowly beneath them. Her 4 arms were crossed behind her back, the golden armor plates on her shoulders catching the light from the ship's displays. At 8 feet tall, with crystalline scales that shifted from deep purple to black, depending on her mood, she was an imposing figure even among her own species. "Report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. Lieutenant Keth Moore, a younger Valonian with bright green scales, approached nervously. "Commander, our scans show the planet's inhabitants are still using primitive chemical propulsion. Their most advanced weapons appear to be nuclear in nature, but they lack any form of energy shielding or faster-than-light travel." Zerathix let out a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a growl. "Humans," she said with disgust. "The Council was right to assign this as punishment duty. What challenge could such a backward species possibly present?" The truth was, Zerathix was here because she had spoken out against the High Command's decision to negotiate with the Terran Federation instead of simply taking what they wanted. She had called the human delegation primitive apes who had barely learned to walk upright during a formal session. Her punishment was to oversee the integration of Earth into the Valonian Empire. "Shall I begin bombardment of their major cities?" asked Keth Moore eagerly. "No," Zerathix replied, her tail swishing behind her in annoyance. "The High Command wants their infrastructure intact. We'll demonstrate our superiority through a show of force, then demand their surrender. These humans will bow before Valonian might, just like every other species we've encountered." She moved to her command chair, pressing several buttons on the armrest. Across the fleet of 60 warships, weapons systems powered up. Each vessel was over a mile long, bristling with plasma cannons and particle beam arrays that could crack a planet's crust. "Open a channel to all human communication networks," she ordered. "Channel open, Commander." Zerathix stood, ensuring her full height and armored form would be visible. "Humans of Earth," she began, her voice being translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "I am Commander Zerathix of the Valonian Empire. Your planet is now under our protection. Surrender your governments and submit to imperial rule, and your people will be treated fairly as subjects of the Empire. Resist and face the consequences." On the screen before her, she could see feed from major human cities. Crowds gathered around public displays, their faces showing the fear she expected. Good. Fear made conquest easier. "You have 6 of your hours to respond," she concluded, then cut the transmission. What Zerathix didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. The first contact with the Valonian Empire had come through intercepted communications between their scout ships and the main fleet. Dr. Elizabeth Chun, Earth's leading xenobiologist, had been part of the team that decoded those transmissions. The messages revealed not just the Valonian language, but their military tactics, their psychology, and, most importantly, their weaknesses. In an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Marcus Rodriguez was addressing the Emergency Defense Council via secure link. "Ladies and gentlemen, Pandora Protocol is now active. All defense networks are online, and our assets are in position." Dr. Chen's voice came through the speakers. "General, the psychological profiles suggest that Valonian military culture is built around displays of individual dominance. Their commander will likely want to demonstrate personal superiority before accepting any surrender." "That plays into our hands," replied Admiral Sarakim from the Pacific Fleet. "Our analysis of their technology shows they rely heavily on energy shielding and directed energy weapons. But they've never encountered kinetic bombardment at the scale we're prepared to deliver." President Martinez's voice joined the conversation. "Confirmed. The Lunar Rail Network is charged and ready. Mars Base has launched their package, and the asteroid belt mining platforms are standing by." Back aboard the Crimson Dominion, Zerathix was reviewing intelligence reports on human military capabilities when her communications officer interrupted. "Commander, We're receiving a response from Earth. Put it through, she said, settling into her chair with anticipation. The face that appeared on her screen was that of an elderly human male in military uniform. Commander Zarathix, I am General Rodriguez, speaking for the United Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your offer, but I'm afraid we must decline. Zarathix's scales darkened to black. You dare refuse the generous offer of the Veolonian Empire? We're not refusing friendship, Rodriguez said calmly. But Earth isn't interested in becoming anyone's subject. However, we would welcome the opportunity to meet with you in person to discuss alternatives. Meet? With a primitive, Zarathix caught herself. Very well, General. I will come to your planet's surface and accept your surrender personally. Prepare a landing site near your largest city. Acknowledged, Rodriguez replied. There's a large field in Central Park, New York. We'll have it cleared and ready. After the transmission ended, Lieutenant Kethmore approached. Commander, surely you're not planning to go down there alone? Of course not, Zarathix replied. Prepare my personal guard. 20 of our best warriors should be more than sufficient to impress these humans. She stood and began walking toward her quarters. And prepare the ceremonial combat armor. If these humans want to see Veolonian might up close, I'll give them a demonstration they'll never forget. What she couldn't see was the slight smile on Dr. Chen's face as she watched the transmission from the command center. General, she said quietly, she's taking the bait perfectly. Veolonian pride is going to be their downfall. Are you certain about their armor's vulnerabilities? Rodriguez asked. Absolutely. Their technology is impressive, but it's designed to counter energy weapons and directed force. They've never had to deal with what we're planning to throw at them. As Zarathix prepared for what she thought would be a simple demonstration of superiority, she had no idea that Earth's greatest minds had spent 3 years preparing specifically for this moment. The humans weren't just ready for the Veolonians. They were about to turn the tables in ways the proud commander couldn't imagine. The shuttle bay of the Crimson Dominion hummed with activity as Zarathix's personal transport was prepared. She stood before her assembled guard, each warrior standing nearly 7 feet tall and armed with plasma rifles and energy blades. Their armor gleamed with the same golden metal as her own, inscribed with the victories of the Veolonian Empire. Remember, she addressed them, we are not just representing ourselves today. We carry the pride of the Empire. These humans will see what true warriors look like. Her second-in-command, Captain Vorash, stepped forward. Commander, might I suggest we bring additional security? These humans might attempt some form of treachery. Zarathix's laugh echoed through the shuttle bay. Treachery? From a species that still fights with chemical explosives? Vorash, your caution is noted but unnecessary. What could these primitives possibly do against Veolonian technology? The shuttle lifted off smoothly, carrying its cargo of confident Veolonian warriors toward Earth's surface. Through the viewport, Zarathix watched the planet grow larger, noting the sprawling cities and the primitive aircraft that maintained a respectful distance from their craft. Look at them, she said to Vorash, pointing at a formation of human fighter jets. Their fastest vessels can barely break the sound barrier, and they call themselves a space-faring civilization. What she didn't realize was that those same jets were equipped with new targeting systems, tracking her shuttle's approach and feeding data to defense networks around the globe. Every movement, every energy signature, every detail of Veolonian technology was being recorded and analyzed. The shuttle touched down in Central Park with barely a sound, its anti-gravity systems creating small whirlwinds in grass. Zarathix was the first to emerge, stepping onto Earth soil with her head held high. The sensation was strange. The gravity was lighter than Veolonia Prime, making her feel even more powerful than usual. A delegation of humans waited for them. Most wore military uniforms, but Zarathix's attention was immediately drawn to a small female in civilian clothes who stood at the front of the group. She was perhaps 5.5 feet tall, with graying hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. Next to her towered the human military officers, but Something about the small woman's presence suggested she was the real authority here. Commander Zarathix, General Rodriguez stepped forward. Welcome to Earth. This is Dr. Elizabeth Chun, our leading expert on interspecies relations. Zarathix looked down at Dr. Chun with barely concealed amusement. This is who you send to negotiate with the Veolonian Empire? A human who barely reaches my chest. Dr. Chun smiled warmly and extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Commander, size has never been a reliable indicator of capability. I look forward to our discussions. The gesture puzzled Zarathix. On Veolonia, first meetings between military leaders involved demonstrations of strength. This offering of an unprotected limb seemed either foolishly trusting or insultingly casual. Dr. Chun, she said, ignoring the extended hand, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not here to negotiate. I am here to accept your surrender and begin the process of integrating Earth into the Empire. With respect, Commander, Dr. Chun replied, lowering her hand but maintaining her smile, I think you may be the one who's misunderstood the situation. Zarathix's scales began to darken slightly. Explain. You see, Dr. Chun continued, gesturing toward the city skyline. Humanity has been aware of your empire for some time now. We've had the opportunity to study your technology, your culture, and your methods. And while we certainly respect your achievements, we're not interested in conquest or submission. You speak as if you have a choice in the matter, Zarathix replied, her voice taking on a threatening tone. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. She gestured to one of her guards, who immediately drew his plasma rifle and fired at a nearby tree. The ancient oak exploded into flames, reduced to ash in seconds. The humans in the delegation took a step back, but Dr. Chun remained perfectly still. Impressive, she said calmly. May I show you something in return? Without waiting for an answer, Dr. Chun spoke into a small device on her wrist. Control, this is Chun. Execute Demonstration Alpha. High above them, invisible to Veolonian sensors, a small satellite adjusted its position. A narrow beam of coherent energy lanced down from orbit, striking a boulder about 50 yards away. The rock didn't explode or burn. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind a perfectly spherical crater in the ground. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zarathix felt a flicker of uncertainty. What was that? A mining laser, Dr. Chun replied casually. We use them to clear asteroids in our belt. Of course, we've made some modifications over the years. She paused, studying Zarathix's reaction. Your shield technology is quite impressive, Commander, but it's designed to disperse energy over a wide area. I wonder how it would handle a focused beam with that level of coherence. Zarathix's mind raced. The energy readings from that beam were unlike anything in her experience. Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated that humans lacked advanced energy weapons. Your intelligence was correct, Dr. Chun said with that same gentle smile. We don't use energy weapons in warfare. We prefer more direct approaches. She spoke into her communicator again. Control, demonstration beta. This time, the effect was immediate. A streak of light crossed the sky above them, moving so fast it was barely visible. A mile away, a small hill that had stood for thousands of years simply vanished in a cloud of dust and debris. Kinetic bombardment, Dr. Chun explained to the stunned Veolonians. A tungsten rod, approximately 6 feet long, accelerated to 30% of light speed. No explosives, no energy weapons, just good old-fashioned momentum. She looked up at Zarathix with interest. I don't suppose your armor is rated for that level of kinetic impact? For the first time in her military career, Commander Zarathix of the Veolonian Empire felt something she had never experienced before, doubt. These humans, these supposedly primitive apes, were casually demonstrating weapons that defied her understanding of their technological level. How? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Physics, mostly, Dr. Chun replied, and the advantage of being underestimated. You see, Commander, while your empire was conquering through shows of force, humanity was learning. We've been watching, studying, adapting. Your technology is impressive, but it's also predictable. Zarathik straightened, trying to regain her composure. Even if you possess these weapons, you're still just one world. The Veilonian Empire spans hundreds of systems, commands millions of ships. Actually, Dr. Chun interrupted gently. It's about 57 systems, and Zarathix sat heavily on the human bench, her armored form making the metal creak under her weight. Her guards maintained their positions, but she could see the uncertainty in their stances. Captain Vorash kept glancing between the crater where the hill used to be and his plasma rifle, as if wondering whether his weapon would be useful at all. Dr. Chun settled beside her with the ease of someone sitting down for a casual conversation. Commander, before we continue, I want you to understand something important. Humanity doesn't want a war with the Veilonian Empire. Then you will surrender? Zarathix asked, grasping for familiar ground. No, Dr. Chun replied patiently. We want to offer you something better than conquest. We want to offer you partnership. The word hit Zarathix like a physical blow. Partnership? With primitives? With equals, Dr. Chun corrected. You see, Commander, your empire has made a fundamental error in understanding humanity. You've assumed that technological advancement follows a single path. The Veilonians developed incredible energy manipulation, advanced materials, and powerful starships. But humans took a different route. She gestured toward the sky, where Zarathix's fleet waited in orbit. Your ships are marvels of engineering, but they're also predictable. Energy shields, plasma weapons, directed force projection. Every species you've conquered has followed similar technological development patterns. Because those are the optimal solutions, Zarathix protested weakly. For your environment, perhaps. But humans evolved differently. We're tool users, Commander. We don't just develop technology, we adapt it, combine it, use it in ways it was never intended for. Dr. Chin smiled. Would you like to know how we first detected your scout ships 3 years ago? Zarathix nodded, unable to speak. Radio telescopes. Technology that's over a century old for us. We were listening to the cosmic background radiation when your scouts used their faster-than-light communication systems. The quantum entanglement created tiny fluctuations that our instruments picked up. Dr. Chun chuckled. Your own technology betrayed your presence to what you considered primitive listening devices. The implications hit Zarathix like a cascade of falling stones. You've been monitoring our communications for 3 years. Not just monitoring, learning. Your language, your culture, your military doctrine. Did you know that Veilonian tactical manuals are surprisingly standardized? Once we cracked the encryption on one ship's database, we had access to virtually your entire strategic framework. Captain Vorash stepped forward, his weapon raised. Commander, this is clearly an intelligence breach of massive proportions. We should return to the ship immediately and inform High Command. Dr. Chin looked at him with interest. Captain, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Are you threatening us? Vorash demanded. Warning you, she replied calmly. She spoke into her communicator again. Control, please show Captain Vorash the current status of the Veilonian fleet. A holographic display materialized in the air between them, showing the positions of all 60 Veilonian ships in orbit. But the display also showed something else. Thousands of small objects surrounding the fleet, too small to be detected by Veilonian sensors, but clearly visible in the human projection. What are those? Zarathix asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify her. Mining drones, Dr. Chin explained. We've been busy while you were issuing your ultimatum. Each one carries about 50 pounds of high-velocity tungsten pellets. They're positioned at optimal strike vectors around every ship in your fleet. Vorash's weapon trembled in his hands. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected them. Your sensors are designed to detect energy signatures and large mass movements. These drones are essentially inert until activated. No energy emissions, minimal heat signature, and they're made primarily of carbon fiber composite. To your instruments, they look like space debris. General Rodriguez spoke for the first time since the landing. Commander, at this point, humanity could disable your entire fleet without firing a single energy weapon. We're not doing this to threaten you, but to demonstrate that the balance of power isn't what your empire assumed. Zarathix stared at the holographic display, watching the tiny markers that represented doom for everything she had ever believed in. How many ships could you destroy? All of them, Dr. Chen replied without hesitation. But, Commander, that's not what we want to do. Those ships represent thousands of Veilonian lives, advanced technology, and centuries of your civilization's development. Destroying them would be wasteful and tragic. Then what do you want? Zarathix asked, her voice barely audible. Dr. Chen stood and walked a few steps away, gazing up at the sky where the Veilonian fleet waited unknowingly in humanity's crosshairs. We want what humanity has always wanted, Commander. We want to learn. We want to grow. We want to reach for something greater than ourselves. She turned back to face Zarathix. Your empire controls incredible resources. You have knowledge of stellar engineering, energy manipulation, and biological systems that we've only dreamed of. But you've reached a plateau. You conquer, you control, you maintain, but when was the last time the Veilonian Empire created something truly new? The question struck deeper than any weapon could have. Zarathix realized that she couldn't remember the last significant innovation to come from Veilonian space. They had perfected the art of conquest, but in doing so, they had stopped pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Humanity offers something different, Dr. Chen continued. We offer innovation, adaptation, the kind of thinking that turns century-old radio telescopes into early warning systems, or mining equipment into strategic weapons. You're suggesting an alliance? Zarathix asked. I'm suggesting evolution. The Veilonian Empire and humanity, working together, could accomplish things that neither could achieve alone. Your energy manipulation combined with our material science. Your stellar engineering merged with our adaptive problem-solving. Your empire's resources supporting human innovation. Captain Vorash stepped forward again, but this time his weapon was lowered. Commander, with respect, this is beyond our authority to negotiate. Actually, Captain, Dr. Chen said, according to Veilonian military law, a field commander has full authority to negotiate terms of engagement when facing superior force. I believe that's Regulation 7.3 of the Imperial Military Code. Zarathix stared at her. The human had just quoted Veilonian law with perfect accuracy. How could you possibly know? Research, Commander. We've been very thorough. Dr. Chun returned to the bench and sat down again. But more than that, we've been respectful. We could have used this information to sow chaos in your command structure, to turn your own regulations against you. Instead, we're offering you a choice. She gestured toward the holographic display, still showing the trapped Veilonian fleet. Option 1. You return to your ship, try to warn your fleet, and watch as humanity demonstrates exactly why underestimating us was a mistake. Your ships are disabled, your crews are captured, and the Veilonian Empire learns about human capabilities the hard way. The display shifted, now showing shipping lanes and trade routes between Earth and Veilonian space. Option 2. You become the commander who opened a new chapter in galactic history. The one who recognized that true strength comes from cooperation, not conquest. Zarathix found herself studying Dr. Chen's face, trying to understand the mind behind those calm eyes. And if I choose option 2, what guarantee do I have that humanity won't simply turn these weapons against the Empire once we've shared our technology? None, Dr. Chen admitted freely. Just as we have no guarantee that the Empire won't try to conquer us once you've learned to counter our current advantages. Trust has to start somewhere, Commander. She leaned forward slightly. But consider this. Humanity has just demonstrated that we could have destroyed your fleet before you ever knew we were a threat. Instead, we invited you down to talk. We showed you our capabilities openly, rather than using them in secret. Does that sound like the behavior of a species planning betrayal? General Rodriguez cleared his throat. Commander, perhaps a demonstration of good faith would help. Dr. Chun, show her the gift. Dr. Chun nodded and spoke into her communicator. Control. Implement Transfer Protocol Omega. The holographic display changed again, now showing the Crimson Dominion in detail. As they watched, new information began appearing on the ship's systems. Star charts showing resource-rich worlds beyond the current borders of known space. Mathematical formulas for improving energy efficiency in plasma conduits, and defensive configurations that could increase shield effectiveness by 30%. What is this? Zarathix breathed. A peace offering, Dr. Chen replied. Information that will help your people, shared freely as a gesture of goodwill. The star charts alone contain data on 12 systems rich in the rare minerals your empire needs for ship construction. Captain Vorash was staring at his own risk communicator, which was displaying some of the same information. Commander, these shield modifications, if they work, they could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. They work, General Rodriguez confirmed. We tested them using captured data from your scout ships. The improvements are real. Zarathix stood slowly, her mind reeling from everything she had learned. You're giving us military advantages? Why? Because true partnership requires trust from both sides, Dr. Chen explained. We're showing you that human innovation can benefit the Veolonian Empire. In return, we hope you'll consider how Veolonian knowledge could benefit humanity. The commander of the Veolonian fleet found herself facing a decision that would reshape her understanding of power, conquest, and civilization itself. The humans had systematically dismantled every assumption she had brought to Earth, but they had done so while offering her something she had never expected to find among the stars: respect. Dr. Chun, she said finally, I need to speak with my superiors. But first, I need to understand something. How did your species develop this level of strategic thinking? This ability to plan so far in advance? Dr. Chun smiled, and for the first time, Zarathix recognized something familiar in that expression. It was the look of a warrior who had won a victory not through strength, but through superior tactics. The communication chamber aboard the Crimson Dominion hummed with quantum entanglement energy as Zarathix prepared to make the most important call of her career. She had returned to her ship 3 hours ago, her mind churning with everything Dr. Chan had revealed. Captain Vorash stood beside her, his usual confidence replaced by visible uncertainty. Commander, he said quietly, are we really going to recommend an alliance with these humans? Zarathix touched the control panel, but paused before activating the quantum communicator. Vorash, in your estimation, how many of our ships could we save if the humans activated those drones? The captain studied the tactical displays showing the mining drones' positions. Honestly, perhaps 10%. And only if we acted immediately and accepted heavy losses. And how many human lives would we need to sacrifice to take their planet? Vorash was quiet for a long moment. Commander, based on what we've seen today, I'm not certain we could take it at all. Zarathix nodded grimly and activated the communicator. The holographic projection filled the chamber as High Admiral Kextera materialized before them. Her scales were a deep burgundy that marked her as one of the oldest and most powerful Veolonians in the Empire. Commander Zarathix, the Admiral said, her voice carrying across the light years instantly. Report on the human surrender. Admiral, Zarathix began carefully, the humans have not surrendered. Kextera's scales darkened slightly. Explain. For the next 20 minutes, Zarathix outlined everything that had happened on Earth's surface. She showed the Admiral the tactical displays revealing the human mining drones, explained the weapons demonstrations, and detailed the technological capabilities the humans had revealed. When she finished, Kextera was silent for several long moments. Finally, she spoke. Commander, are you telling me that this primitive species has effectively held our entire fleet hostage? Yes, Admiral. And that they did this without our knowledge or detection? Yes, Admiral. And rather than destroy us, they offered partnership? Yes, Admiral. Kextera's image flickered as she moved closer to her own communication device. Commander, this is either the most elaborate deception in galactic history, or we have severely underestimated the human species. With respect, Admiral, I believe it's the latter. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that our intelligence networks completely missed. Their approach to warfare is unlike anything in our experience. The Admiral was quiet again, processing the implications. What are they asking for in return for this partnership? Access to Veolonian energy technology, stellar engineering knowledge, and what Dr. Chen called cultural exchange. They want to learn from us, Admiral, not conquer us. And you believe this is genuine? Zarathix thought about Dr. Chen's calm demeanor, the casual way she had demonstrated weapons that could destroy the entire fleet, and the gift of technological improvements. Admiral, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it before we ever knew they were a threat. Instead, they've shown us respect and offered us growth. High Admiral Kextara was quiet for nearly a full minute. When she spoke again, her voice carried a tone Zarathix had never heard from her before: uncertainty. Commander, I need you to arrange a formal meeting. Not surrender negotiations, a diplomatic contact. If what you're telling me is accurate, the Empire needs to reassess its position regarding humanity. Admiral, there's something else. The humans have requested that I remain on Earth as a liaison while these discussions continue. They've offered to provide accommodations, and Zarathix paused, unsure how to phrase the next part. They've invited me to observe their society firsthand. Explain. They want me to see how their civilization functions. Dr. Chun believes that understanding their culture will be essential for successful cooperation. Admiral Kextara's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. This Dr. Chun seems to be the key figure in their leadership structure. What's your assessment of her? She's unlike any military leader I've encountered, Admiral. She demonstrates strength without aggression, knowledge without arrogance. She outmaneuvered our entire fleet while sitting on a bench in a park, but she did it while offering us friendship. Very well, Commander. Remain on Earth and learn what you can. I'll present your report to the High Council and arrange for proper diplomatic contact. But Zarathix, yes, Admiral, if this is a deception, if the humans are playing some elaborate game, the consequences will be severe. The Empire doesn't tolerate betrayal. Understood, Admiral. But I don't believe we're being deceived. I think we're being offered something we didn't know we needed: the chance to grow beyond conquest. After the communication ended, Zarathix found herself alone with her thoughts. She had just committed her career, possibly her life, to the belief that these humans were sincere in their offer of partnership. Everything in her training told her it was foolish to trust a potential enemy. But everything she had seen today suggested that humanity was offering something unprecedented in galactic history. Captain Vorash interrupted her contemplation. Commander, we're receiving another communication from the human surface. Put it through. Dr. Chen's face appeared on the display, still wearing that gentle smile that somehow managed to be both comforting and terrifying. Commander, I hope your discussion with your superiors went well. If you're ready, we'd like to show you something. What did you have in mind, Dr. Chun? A tour of our world. Not the military installations or the weapons systems, but the parts of humanity that don't make it into intelligence reports. The parts that make us who we are. Zarathix found herself curious despite her wariness. What do you mean? Schools, Commander. Research facilities. Art galleries. Places where humans create instead of destroy. I think you might find them interesting. The shuttle ride to their first destination took them over vast human cities, sprawling agricultural areas, and landscapes that seemed to blend natural beauty with technological achievement. Zarathix noticed that unlike Veolonian worlds, which were typically dominated by massive industrial complexes and military installations, Earth seemed to maintain a balance between development and preservation. Commander, Dr. Chan said as they flew over a forest that stretched to the horizon. May I ask about Veolonian art? The question surprised Zarathix. Art? We have monuments to military victories, sculptures honoring great conquests. But what about art for its own sake? Beauty created simply because it brings joy. Zarathix realized she couldn't answer the question. In Veolonian society, everything served the Empire. Art that didn't glorify military achievement or imperial power was considered wasteful. They landed at what Dr. Chan called a university, a place where young humans came to learn. As they walked through the campus, Zarathix was struck by the diversity of subjects being studied. Mathematics, yes, and engineering, but also music, literature, philosophy, and dozens of other fields that seemed to have no military application whatsoever. "This is Professor Williams," Dr. Chun said, introducing them to an elderly human male. "He studies ancient history." "Ancient history?" Zarathix asked. "How does that serve your defense needs?" Professor Williams laughed. "It doesn't directly, but it helps us understand how civilizations rise and fall, how cultures adapt and change, how people find meaning in their lives." They spent an hour walking through the university, and Zarathix found herself increasingly confused. These humans seemed to spend enormous resources on knowledge that had no immediate practical application. Yet somehow, this same species had outmaneuvered the Veolonian Empire with startling ease. Their next stop was even more bewildering, a place Dr. Chun called a children's hospital. Here, human healers worked tirelessly to help the sick and injured among their youngest members. But what struck Zarathix most was the presence of art, colorful paintings on the walls, musicians playing gentle melodies, storytellers entertaining the young patients. "Why?" she asked Dr. Chun. "Why spend resources on beautification when those resources could be used for medical equipment?" "Because healing isn't just about fixing what's broken, Commander. It's about helping people remember what makes life worth living." They met Dr. Sarah Patel, a pediatric surgeon who had developed new techniques for treating genetic disorders. But when Zarathix asked about the military applications of her work, Dr. Patel seemed genuinely confused. "Military applications? Commander, I became a doctor to heal children. The techniques I develop are shared freely with anyone who needs them, even with former enemies." "Former enemies?" Dr. Chun explained. "Humanity has a long history of conflict, Commander. But we've learned that knowledge, especially medical knowledge, transcends political boundaries. Dr. Patel's techniques are used in countries that were at war with each other just decades ago." As the day progressed, Zarathix visited research laboratories where humans studied everything from the behavior of microscopic organisms to the formation of distant galaxies. She met artists who created beauty with no purpose beyond expression, teachers who dedicated their lives to sharing knowledge, and engineers who designed systems to clean polluted water in impoverished regions with no expectation of profit. "I don't understand," she finally said to Dr. Chun as they sat in a small cafe near the university. "How does a civilization that wastes so much resources on—" She struggled for the words. "On compassion," Dr. Chun suggested gently. "On curiosity? On beauty? Yes. How does such a civilization develop the strategic thinking to outmaneuver a galactic empire?" Dr. Chun sipped her tea thoughtfully before answering. "Commander, do you know what makes humans most dangerous as opponents? Your unpredictability, our empathy, the ability to understand how others think, to see the universe from their perspective. You can't truly outthink an enemy unless you can think like them. And you can't think like them unless you can empathize with them." She gestured toward the university campus visible through the cafe window. All of this, the art, the literature, the study of history, and culture, it teaches us to understand minds that are different from our own. A human child who studies music learns to think in mathematical patterns. A historian who studies ancient wars learns to anticipate strategic thinking. A doctor who heals former enemies learns to see past cultural differences. 3 weeks had passed since Zarathix's first meeting with Dr. Chun, and the Veolonian commander found herself in a situation she had never imagined. She was enjoying her time on Earth. The humans had provided her with quarters in what they called a diplomatic residence, a comfortable building near the United Nations headquarters in New York. More surprising than the accommodations was the freedom they had given her to explore human society. This morning, she was sitting in Washington Square Park, watching humans go about their daily lives. Children played while their parents watched, street musicians performed for small crowds, and vendors sold food from wheeled carts. The casual normalcy of it all was unlike anything she had experienced on Vailonian worlds, where civilian life was highly regimented and focused on supporting the Empire's military needs. "Commander, your morning meditation looks quite serious." Zarathix looked up to see Dr. Chun approaching with 2 cups of the human beverage called coffee. Over the past weeks, these informal meetings had become a daily routine. Dr. Chun would find her somewhere in the city, and they would spend an hour or two discussing everything from galactic politics to the behavior of the small Earth creatures called squirrels. "I've been thinking about efficiency," Zarathix said, accepting the coffee. She had developed a taste for the bitter drink, though she was careful not to admit how much she enjoyed it. "Human society seems remarkably inefficient from a Vailonian perspective, yet you achieve results that our efficiency cannot match." Dr. Chin settled onto the bench beside her. "Can you give me an example?" "Yesterday, I observed a human research team working on improvements to stellar navigation. They spent 40 minutes discussing whether their calculations were correct, with each team member presenting different viewpoints. On a Vailonian ship, the senior officer would make the decision in 5 minutes. And how often are those decisions correct?" Zarathix paused. "Usually, Vailonian officers are well-trained. But not always." "No, not always." She took a sip of coffee, remembering incidents where quick decisions had led to costly mistakes. "When errors occur, they tend to be significant. The human team you observed will probably spend another day debating their calculations. But when they're done, the solution will be better than anything one person could have developed alone, and everyone on the team will understand it well enough to improve it further." Dr. Chun pointed toward a group of children playing a complex game that seemed to involve constantly changing rules. "Humans learn early that the best solutions often come from collaboration, even when it seems inefficient. But how do you maintain order? Authority? In Vailonian society, clear chains of command ensure stability. We've found that stability can come from flexibility too. When people feel heard and valued, they're more willing to work together toward common goals. When they're simply following orders, they stop thinking creatively." Their conversation was interrupted by Zarathix's communicator. Captain Vorash's voice came through clearly. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from High Admiral Kexthara." "I'll be right there." Zarathix stood, but Dr. Chun remained seated. "Commander, before you go, would you like me to accompany you for this communication? As a gesture of good faith, your admiral is welcome to include human representatives in the discussion." The offer surprised Zarathix, but she found herself nodding. "Yes, I think that would be helpful." An hour later, they were aboard the Crimson Dominion in the communication chamber. Zarathix had insisted that Dr. Chun be allowed to bring General Rodriguez and Admiral Kim as additional observers. The humans showed polite interest in Vailonian technology, but Zarathix noticed that they carefully avoided looking at anything that might be considered sensitive information. High Admiral Kexthara's hologram filled the chamber, but this time she was not alone. Behind her stood 5 other high-ranking Vailonian officers, and, in the background, Zarathix could see members of the Imperial Council. "Commander Zarathix," the Admiral began formally, "I'm transmitting from the Imperial Council chambers on Vaelonia Prime. Your report has generated considerable discussion among the Empire's leadership." "I understand, Admiral. The Council has decided to test the humans' claims of peaceful intent. We are dispatching a diplomatic mission to Earth, led by myself. However, this mission will be accompanied by a fleet of 300 warships." Dr. Chun stepped forward slightly. "Admiral Kexthara, may I address the Council?" The Admiral's scales showed surprise, but after a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "You may speak, Dr. Chun of Earth." "Thank you, Admiral. The human government welcomes formal diplomatic contact with the Vailonian Empire. However, we hope you'll understand that approaching Earth with 300 warships might send the wrong message to our people. The fleet is necessary for the protection of Imperial personnel. With respect, Admiral Commander Zerethix has been on Earth for 3 weeks with only her personal guard. She has been treated with honor and safety. We would be happy to extend the same courtesy to your diplomatic mission. One of the council members spoke from the background. Dr. Chun, the humans have demonstrated military capabilities that concern the Empire. We require assurance that our diplomatic mission will not be threatened. Dr. Chun nodded calmly. Council member, I understand your concern. Perhaps we can address it directly. She spoke into her communicator. Control, please display current defensive positions around Earth space. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing Earth and the surrounding space. What appeared made every Valonian in the room step backward. The space around Earth was filled with defensive platforms, weapon stations, and mobile patrol units that dwarfed even the most optimistic estimates of human military capability. This is impossible, breathed one of the Admiral's officers. Our intelligence indicated a few primitive orbital installations. Your intelligence was correct about our installations, General Rodriguez said, speaking for the first time. What you're seeing now was built in the last 3 weeks, while Commander Zerethix has been visiting Earth. Admiral Kim stepped forward. Admiral Kexthra, humanity has been preparing for the possibility that the Valonian Empire might not accept our offer of partnership. The defensive network you're seeing now could destroy a fleet of 300 ships before they entered the inner solar system. But, Dr. Chun said gently, we don't want to destroy your ships, Admiral. We want to welcome your diplomatic mission. If you're willing to approach with a smaller escort, say 20 ships, we'll stand down our defensive network and provide safe passage to Earth. Zerethix watched the exchange with growing amazement. In 3 weeks, while she had been learning about human culture, humanity had built a defensive network capable of stopping a major Imperial fleet. Yet they were offering to disable it as a gesture of trust. High Admiral Kexthra conferred quietly with the council members for several minutes before responding. Dr. Chun, you're asking the Valonian Empire to trust a species we barely know. Yes, Admiral, just as we're trusting you not to use the technology improvements we've already shared with your fleet to develop new weapons against us. What technology improvements? Zerethix stepped forward. Admiral, the humans provided shield enhancements and energy efficiency upgrades to our fleet 3 weeks ago. Your engineers have been implementing them across the entire task force. The Admiral's expression showed that she had been aware of the improvements, but not their source. You gave us military technology without asking for anything in return. As a gesture of good faith, Dr. Chin confirmed. The same spirit in which we're offering to lower our defenses for your diplomatic mission. Another long pause as the Admiral consulted with the Council. Finally, she spoke. Very well. The diplomatic mission will consist of my flagship and an escort of 15 vessels. We will arrive at Earth in 10 standard days. We'll be ready to welcome you, Admiral. Dr. Chun replied with a slight bow. After the transmission ended, Zerethix found herself alone with the humans in her communication chamber. Dr. Chun, may I ask you something in private? Of course. This defensive network you showed the Admiral. It's real, isn't it? Yes, Commander, it's real. You built it in 3 weeks? While I was drinking coffee and watching children play in your parks. We built it because you were drinking coffee and watching children play in our parks, Dr. Chin corrected. Commander, did you think we weren't watching you too? Zerethix's scales shifted to a pale blue of confusion. I don't understand. General Rodriguez answered. Commander, you've spent 3 weeks observing human society. In that time, you've never tried to gather intelligence on our military capabilities, never attempted to contact your fleet for strategic purposes, never shown any hostile intent toward human civilians. You've been respectful, curious, and genuinely interested in understanding our culture, Admiral Kim added. That told us more about Valonian character than any intelligence report could have. Dr. Chin smiled. Your behavior convinced us that partnership with the Valonian Empire might actually be possible. So we prepare to make it happen. But what if I had behaved differently? What if I had tried to gather intelligence or shown hostility toward your people? Then, the defensive network would still be there, Dr. Chun said simply. But we would have used it. Zarathix realized that she had been part of a test she hadn't even known she was taking. The humans had watched her interactions with their society, judged the character of the Valonian Empire based on her behavior, and prepared accordingly. Dr. Chun, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. Do you actually trust me? Or is this all an elaborate strategy? Dr. Chun was quiet for a moment before answering. Commander, 3 weeks ago, you were a stranger from a hostile empire. Today, you're someone I consider a friend. Trust isn't something humans give easily, but we've learned to recognize it when we see it in others. She paused, looking directly into Zarathix's eyes. The question is, do you trust us? Zarathix thought about everything she had experienced on Earth. The kindness of strangers, the complexity of human society, the casual way they had demonstrated power beyond anything the Empire could match, and the consistent choice to offer partnership instead of demanding submission. Yes, she said finally, I do trust you, and I think that terrifies me. High Admiral Kextera stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Imperial Sovereignty, watching Earth grow larger in the view screen. 10 days of faster-than-light travel had given her plenty of time to study the intelligence reports Zarathix had compiled during her stay on the human world. What she had read challenged everything the Valonian Empire believed about power, civilization, and the nature of strength itself. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. Dr. Chin's familiar face appeared on the screen, but this time she was in what appeared to be an official government building rather than a park or cafe. Hi, Admiral Kextera. Welcome to Earth Space. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Chun, representing the United Earth government in these proceedings. Dr. Chun, the Admiral replied formally, the Valonian Empire appreciates your willingness to engage in diplomatic contact. The pleasure is ours, Admiral. If you're ready, we've prepared landing coordinates for the formal reception. Commander Zarathix has agreed to guide your shuttle to the designated area. Kextera glanced at her tactical displays. True to their word, the humans had deactivated their defensive network. The space around Earth showed only normal civilian traffic and a few patrol ships that maintained respectful distances from the Valonian fleet. Very well, Dr. Chun. We'll depart for the surface within the hour. As the transmission ended, Admiral Kextera turned to her second-in-command, Captain Dexnara. Your assessment of the situation? Admiral, if the intelligence commander Zarathix has gathered is accurate, we're dealing with a species unlike any we've encountered. Their military capabilities exceed our initial estimates by several orders of magnitude, but their behavior suggests genuine interest in peaceful cooperation. And if they're deceiving us? Captain Dexnara studied the tactical displays showing Earth's defensive positions in standby mode. Then, we're walking into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. But, Admiral, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it before we entered this system. The shuttle bay of the Imperial Sovereignty was a hive of activity as Admiral Kextera's diplomatic party prepared for departure. Unlike Zarathix's first visit to Earth, this was a formal diplomatic mission with all the ceremony that Imperial protocol required. The Admiral wore her full ceremonial armor, adorned with the honors she had earned in dozens of conquered systems. Zarathix met them at the shuttle, but her appearance gave the Admiral pause. The commander was still wearing Valonian military dress, but something about her bearing had changed. She stood with the same confidence as always, but there was a new quality to her posture, a sense of ease that the Admiral had never seen in Valonian officers operating in hostile territory. Commander, the Admiral said as they took their seats, your reports have been illuminating, but I need to know, have the humans compromised your judgment in any way? No, admitted. If anything, they've clarified it. Zarathix paused as the shuttle lifted off from the Valonian ship. Admiral, what you're about to see will challenge everything we believe about civilization. I ask that you keep an open mind. The flight to Earth's surface took them over the same route Zarathix had traveled during her first visit, but this time the Admiral was able to see the planet with fresh eyes. The cities were vast, but seemed to blend harmoniously with the natural environment. Agricultural areas stretched between population centers, and everywhere she looked, she could see the evidence of a civilization that had learned to balance development with preservation. "Commander," she said quietly, "their population centers show no evidence of military fortification. Because they don't need fortification, Admiral. Their strength doesn't come from walls or weapons. It comes from something more fundamental." The shuttle touched down in the same field where Zarathix had first met Dr. Chun, but now it had been transformed into a formal diplomatic reception area. Flags of both Earth and the Valonian Empire flew side by side, and a red carpet led from the landing site to a pavilion where dignitaries waited. As Admiral Kextera emerged from the shuttle, she was struck by the diversity of the human delegation. There were military officers, yes, but also civilians, scientists, artists, and what appeared to be representatives from different human cultures and ethnic groups. At the center of the group stood Dr. Chun, looking exactly as she had in Zarathix's reports, a small, elderly woman with kind eyes and an aura of quiet authority. "Hi, Admiral Kexra," Dr. Chun said, stepping forward with a formal bow. "On behalf of the United Earth Government and all humanity, I welcome you to our world." The Admiral studied the human delegation carefully. In Valonian diplomatic tradition, the highest-ranking military officer would stand at the center, flanked by subordinates arranged in order of military rank. But the human arrangement seemed almost random, with Dr. Chun clearly in charge despite her lack of obvious military bearing. "Dr. Chun," the Admiral replied, "the Valonian Empire acknowledges your greeting. I am prepared to discuss the terms of Earth's integration into the Empire." Dr. Chin's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in her expression. "Admiral, with respect, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Humanity isn't seeking integration into the Valonian Empire. We're proposing a partnership between equals." "Equals?" Admiral Kextera's scales darkened slightly. "Dr. Chun, the Valonian Empire spans hundreds of worlds and commands fleets that could reduce this planet to ash. In what sense could humanity be considered equal?" "In the sense that matters most, Admiral. In the ability to offer something valuable to a galactic civilization." Dr. Chun gestured toward the pavilion. "Admiral, would you allow us to show you what humanity can contribute to the galaxy? Not as subjects of the Empire, but as partners in building something greater than either of our civilizations could achieve alone." The next several hours were unlike anything in Admiral Kextera's experience. Instead of the formal negotiations she had expected, the humans took her on what they called a demonstration of potential. She visited research facilities where human scientists were working on problems she didn't even know needed solving. At the first stop, Dr. Sarah Kim showed her a project involving stellar engineering on a scale that dwarfed anything the Empire had attempted. "We're developing techniques for stabilizing aging stars, DR," Kim explained, "extending their lifespans by millions of years and preserving entire solar systems that would otherwise be lost." "Why?" Admiral Kextera asked. "When a star dies, the Empire simply relocates any useful populations and resources." "Because," said a young human engineer named Marcus, "every star system represents billions of years of evolution, countless species, and unique combinations of elements and energy that can never be replicated. When we save a star, we're preserving irreplaceable pieces of the universe's history." The second stop was even more bewildering. Dr. Chin introduced her to a team working on what they called cultural preservation technology, methods for documenting and maintaining the languages, traditions, and knowledge systems of different species. "We've learned from our own history," explained Professor Angela Torres, "that when civilizations are absorbed into larger empires, something precious is always lost. Knowledge, perspectives, ways of thinking that could benefit everyone disappear forever." "But surely," the Admiral said, "standardization makes communication and administration more efficient." "Efficiency isn't always optimal," Dr. Chen replied. "Sometimes the solution to a problem comes from a completely different way of thinking. When you eliminate diversity, you eliminate the potential for innovation. Their third stop was a facility that left Admiral Kexteros speechless. Human engineers were working with representatives from dozens of different species, many of whom the Veilonian Empire had conquered or displaced, to develop new technologies that combine the best insights from multiple civilizations. "This is SYPHRA," Dr. Chen said, introducing the Admiral to a graceful being with crystalline features. Her people were displaced when the Empire needed their world for mineral extraction. She's now leading our research into bioadaptive materials. SYPHRA's voice had a musical quality that the Admiral found hauntingly beautiful. Dr. Chen's people offered us something the Empire never did: the chance to use our knowledge to help others rather than simply serving as labor. Admiral Kexteros stared at the crystalline being. The SYPHRE were relocated to appropriate worlds within the Empire. They have been well treated, well fed, and housed. Yes, SYPHRE agreed. But never asked what we dreamed of creating, never invited to share what we had learned in millions of years of evolution on a world unlike any other. The conversation was interrupted by an excited shout from across the laboratory. A human scientist was pointing at a display showing test results that seemed to have exceeded all expectations. "Dr. Chen," the scientist called out, "the bioadaptive materials are showing a 400% improvement in efficiency over our best projections. SYPHR's crystalline growth patterns combined with human carbon fiber techniques are creating something entirely new." Dr. Chen smiled. "Admiral, this is what partnership looks like. Neither humanity nor the SYPHRE could have developed this technology alone. But together, we've created something that will benefit every species we encounter." As the day progressed, Admiral Kexteros saw example after example of human innovation being enhanced by knowledge from other species. But more than that, she saw representatives of conquered peoples working voluntarily, enthusiastically, on projects that seemed to serve no military purpose whatsoever. "Dr. Chen," she said finally, "I need to understand something. What do humans gain from all of this? What drives your people to invest so much effort in helping other species?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. "Admiral, humans learned something important during our own development. The species that survive and thrive aren't necessarily the strongest or the most aggressive. They're the ones that adapt, that learn, that find ways to work together despite their differences." She gestured toward the diverse group of beings working in the laboratory around them. "Every species we help makes us stronger. Every problem we solve together teaches us something new. Every alliance we build makes the galaxy a little safer for everyone. But surely you must seek some advantage? Some benefit for humanity specifically." "We do," Dr. Chen admitted. "We gain knowledge, allies, and the satisfaction of building something better than what existed before. But, Admiral, we've learned that the best way to serve human interests is to serve the interests of civilization itself." Admiral Kexteros found herself thinking about the Veilonian Empire's approach to other species. Conquest, integration, utilization of resources. It was efficient, but suddenly it seemed limited. "Dr. Chen, if humanity were to partner with the Veilonian Empire, what would you expect from us? Your knowledge of stellar engineering, energy manipulation, and resource management. Your experience with large-scale administration and logistics. Your understanding of dozens of different species and their capabilities." Dr. Chen paused. "And your willingness to learn new ways of thinking about strength and civilization. And what would you offer in return?" Dr. Chen smiled and gestured toward everything around them. "Innovation, adaptation, the ability to find solutions that no one has thought of before, and perhaps most importantly, a new model for what an interstellar civilization could become." That evening, in the diplomatic quarters provided by the humans, Admiral Kexteros sat with her senior staff, reviewing everything they had seen and learned. Captain Dexneros spoke for the group when she said, "Admiral, the implications of what we've witnessed today are staggering. Elaborate, the Admiral commanded. If human claims about their capabilities are accurate, then the Veilonian Empire's entire approach to galactic expansion may be obsolete. They've demonstrated technologies and strategic thinking that make our conquest-based model look primitive. Admiral Kextera nodded slowly, and yet they're offering to share all of this with us. Why? Commander Zarathix, who had remained quiet throughout the day's events, finally spoke. Because, Admiral, they've learned something that the Empire never has. True power doesn't come from the ability to force others to serve you. It comes from the ability to inspire them to join you. The next morning brought the formal diplomatic session that would determine the future of both civilizations. Admiral Kextera sat across from Dr. Chun at a table set up in the same park where Zarathix had first been offered partnership 3 weeks earlier. Dr. Chun, the Admiral began, the Veilonian Empire is prepared to consider a formal alliance with humanity. But we need assurance that this partnership will not undermine imperial authority or threaten the stability of our existing territories. Admiral, Dr. Chun replied, humanity has no interest in destabilizing the Empire. But we do hope that our partnership might inspire new approaches to interstellar governance. Explain. What if, instead of ruling through conquest, the Veilonian Empire became known for leading through innovation? What if other species sought to join the Empire not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to be part of something greater? Admiral Kextera thought about SYPHRA and the other displaced beings she had met, working voluntarily on projects that serve the greater good. You're suggesting that the Empire could attract allies rather than creating subjects? I'm suggesting that the Empire could become something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization that grows stronger by making everyone around it stronger too. The negotiations continued for 3 more days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. By the end of the week, Admiral Kextera found herself signing documents that established the Terran-Veilonian Partnership, the first alliance between equals that the Veilonian Empire had ever entered into. As she prepared to return to Veillonia Prime to present the agreement to the Imperial Council, Admiral Kextera realized that she was bringing them more than a diplomatic treaty. She was bringing them a new vision of what the Empire could become. On her last night on Earth, she sat in the same park where this entire transformation had begun, sharing coffee with Dr. Chun and watching humans go about their daily lives. Dr. Chun, she said quietly, when I return to Veillonia Prime, there will be those who argue that the Empire is abandoning the strength that built our civilization. What will you tell them, Admiral? That we're not abandoning strength. We're learning what real strength looks like. Admiral Kextera stood, her full 8-foot frame outlined against the lights of the human city. And that sometimes the greatest victory isn't conquering your enemies, it's turning them into friends. Dr. Chin smiled and raised her coffee cup in a toast. To friendship, Admiral, and to the future we're building together. As Admiral Kextera lifted her own cup, she realized that 6 weeks ago, she had been a conqueror representing an empire built on domination. Tonight, she was a friend representing a civilization that was about to learn what it meant to lead through inspiration instead of intimidation. The human woman beside her had accomplished something that no military force in galactic history had ever achieved. She had convinced the Veilonian Empire to voluntarily choose a better path. And she had done it not through superior firepower or strategic deception, but through the simple, revolutionary act of treating former enemies as potential friends. The galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Chun laughed. Commander, trust should be a little terrifying. It means you're willing to risk something important for the chance of something better. As they prepared to leave the Crimson Dominion, Zarathix realized that the next 10 days would determine the future of 2 civilizations. High Admiral Kextera was coming to Earth with preconceptions about human weakness and Veilonian superiority. But she would find something entirely different, a species that had turned empathy into strategy, curiosity into strength, and trust into the foundation of power. The only question now was whether the Veilonian Empire was ready to learn the most important lesson humanity had to offer, that true strength came not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to find a better path forward together. Zarathix stared at her. You're saying that your civilization's greatest strategic advantage comes from your willingness to care about things that don't benefit you directly? Exactly. Commander, the Veilonian Empire is powerful because it focuses all its energy on conquest and control. But that focus is also a limitation. You think like conquerors, so you can be predicted by anyone who understands conquest. Dr. Chun leaned forward slightly. But humans think like healers and artists and teachers and explorers. We approach problems from angles that pure military minds never consider. That's how we turned mining equipment into weapons, how we used century-old radio telescopes as early warning systems, how we convinced a Veilonian commander to consider partnership instead of conquest. As the sun set over the human city, Zarathix realized that she was beginning to understand something fundamental about power that the Veilonian Empire had never considered. True strength might not come from the ability to force others to submit, but from the wisdom to find solutions that nobody else could imagine. And for the first time in her life, she began to wonder what the galaxy might look like if the Veilonian Empire learned to think like humans. Commander, she said, humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned every possible way to outthink an opponent. When we finally turned that ability toward the stars, we discovered that the universe was full of civilizations who had never needed to think that way. She stood and extended her hand again. The question now is, are you ready to learn something new? This time, Zarathix reached out and grasped the human's small hand in her own armored gauntlet. As she did, she realized that everything she had thought she knew about strength and weakness had just been turned upside down. The real question was whether the Veilonian Empire was ready to evolve. Roughly 40,000 ships of various classes. Your main battle fleet consists of approximately 2,000 vessels, most of which are currently positioned around strategic resource worlds. The blood drained from Zarathix's face, turning her scales a pale gray. How could you possibly know? As I said, Commander, we've been learning. Your communication protocols aren't as secure as you might think, especially when you're dealing with a species that's been intercepting radio signals from space for over a century. Dr. Chun gestured toward a bench near the landing site. Perhaps we should sit down and discuss this properly. I think you'll find that humanity has a very interesting proposition for the Veilonian Empire. As Zarathix walked unsteadily toward the bench, her warriors clustering protectively around her, she realized that everything she thought she knew about this mission had just changed. The primitive humans had somehow gained the upper hand before she even knew the game had begun. And the most terrifying part was that Dr. Chun was still smiling.